It's a series that for the first time ever, or the first time in big mainstream, lots of people are watching this series, media history, we have a major gender fluid character. What am I talking about? Disney Plus / Marvel's Loki TV series. So I'm not going to talk about like the comic book canon. I'm not going to talk about much of the content of the show at all. I'm literally just here to talk about gender and more specifically portrayals of non-binary genders in mainstream TV series. It's actually there. I'm very excited about it. And I wanted to talk about the things that they've done well, the things that they've done badly, and what I think the best possible course of action would be in this kind of situation. So, we're starting off with the fact that Tom Hiddleston had already been cast as Loki before this series was ever really more than conceived. Like, the idea of having a Loki TV series was conceived, it's written into his contract, but like, before it was ever kind of brought to anything, before there was a script or even possibly a premise, he was cast because they wanted to have this masculine presenting Loki. They wanted to pick like man Loki, as it were, for the Avengers movies. And that's fine, like there is literally nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with it. And I do believe that cis actors can play trans and non-binary characters. And the beauty of non-binary characters is that pretty much anybody could play a non-binary character because non-binary bodies and presentations come in all sorts of like flavours and forms. And that's one of the really lovely things about non-binariness. While I think it would have been really nice to have a non-binary actor play Loki because there aren't a lot of opportunities to play non-binary characters and non-binary actors are therefore very limited sometimes, it is, you know, ultimately, that's not how the casting went, and that's okay. Like, I'm very firmly on the stance of cast men to play men and women to play women. So if you're casting for a trans man part, hire a man to play the man. It's weird otherwise because you're hiring a woman to play a man. Yes, it is that weird. But anyway, ultimately, because non-binary comes in all sorts of forms and all sorts of flavours and all sorts of presentations, you could potentially cast anyone to play a non-binary character. That's totally fine. And because Tom Hiddleston was obviously already cast to play Loki before this TV series really got going and before we really had the opportunity to potentially present gender fluid Loki on a mainstream TV series or movie, I can work with it. Tom Hiddleston's happy to play gender fluid Loki. He said in interviews that he was aware that that was part of the character's identity and that he was fully prepared to explore that. And I think, like, props to him for that, because a lot of actors wouldn't be okay with it, especially male actors, because, you know, cis heteropatriarchy and the fact that men think that womanhood is degrading in some way, shape or form. It's not, but, you know, whatever. Change the world. Anyway, so the fact that Tom Hiddleston's happy to play it, and the fact that they had already cast him, we're just going to skim over that in the 4 minutes that I've been talking. So with all of that out of the way, and my stance on whether a cis actor should really be playing a non-binary character out of the way, what have they done well and what have they done badly? Well, I think it's really great that they've actually put gender fluid in Loki's file. I think it's less great that it takes a very, very keen eye to see it. And it would have been nice if it was a bit more there. Like, especially when Loki goes in front of the judge, it would have been really nice if the judge had been there like, what pronouns are you using? You appear to have a masculine presentation, is that accurate? Or something like that. Just something to like highlight it would have been really nice. But like, I get it, they maybe didn't have time for that. Like, TV shows have time constraints, I get it, maybe it didn't fit. Like, I'm quite a forgiving person in the grand scheme of things. And I understand that a lot of people don't really know how to ask about pronouns, but I think that's why it would have been really nice to see it, because like, we need to give people the script for how to ask about pronouns. Because otherwise you get really awkward and weird questions like, oh, like, are you, and it's like, we don't want that. Just ask somebody, what are your pronouns? Or, better yet, volunteer your own pronouns. Anyway, circling back to the point is, I liked that they had it in the file. I wish they'd done a bit more with that. Or just made it a little bit more, like, obvious, I guess, because I only knew it was there because I'd already seen a screenshot of it before I watched the first episode. And to be honest, that screenshot is a huge part of why I watched that first episode. So take that and do what you will with it. I'm starved for non-binary representation. I will watch almost anything with non-binary representation, especially if that non-binary person is not getting abused for being non-binary. I am using non-binary as the umbrella term. I know Loki is gender fluid, but gender fluid does technically fall under the non-binary umbrella. Not all people who are gender fluid identify as non-binary, so I really should be using gender fluid, but it's just like habitually comes out of my mouth, so I'm sorry about that. Anyway, actually no, we're going to circle back to something I think they've done badly. So Tom Hiddleston's Loki, as we meet him in the series, the Loki that we follow in Loki, is a he-him masculine presenting Loki. It's the Loki that you're familiar with from the movies. And they are accurately referring to him as man, boy, all of that kind of stuff. Because that is how you're supposed to refer to gender fluid people. You're supposed to refer to them at whatever point they were in their life as the presentation that they have that day. This is not true for all non-binary and gender fluid people, just it's a general rule of thumb. Like, everybody has their own personal preferences, but ultimately that's a good general rule of thumb. You work with the presentation that you see that day. If you don't see a presentation that day and you want to talk about something that happened in the past, you can use the presentation that they had at that time, or you can use a neutral term for it, or for them in that situation. The it was the situation, not the person. Don't use it for people unless they've specifically asked you to. So calling Loki a scared little boy, or saying he, him, and using masculine terminology is a good thing. However, because they are chasing this variant Loki, which comes out in the first episode, you find that out in the first episode, so that's not really a spoiler, but because they're chasing this variant Loki, who they don't really know anything about, the fact that they're using he, him pronouns and masculine terminology is a little bit weird, because like I said, if you don't know anything about the gender fluid person in question, you should be using neutral terminology, because you don't know what their presentation is. You don't know how they're presenting, why they're presenting that way, what terms they prefer. And if you don't know any of that, you can't accurately say he, him. Like, that is very... it made me very uncomfortable. And I'm not going to talk about, like, anything about the variant Loki and their potential actual pronouns or anything like that. I'm not going to mention that, because I think that, like, I only want to refer to stuff that happened in episode 1 in case people aren't up to date with it, because, you know, life is busy and people don't always have time. And I only watched it yesterday. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the, like, best course of action from here on out, right? Which is, like, cast whoever you like as the variant Loki, basically. That's fine. I mean, I think ultimately the variant Loki should always match up with... There's an either or here. The variant Loki should either match up with a Loki from the comic books, or the variant Loki should match up with Tom Hiddleston's appearance. And the reason for that is because, regardless of what presentation Loki is taking in this universe of the TV series, this Loki, as a Loki base form, not invading somebody else's body, this Loki is Tom Hiddleston. Right? Like, that sounds ridiculous, but that's how it is. This Loki has Tom Hiddleston as a base physical form. And the best possible way to explore that gender identity and have Loki be a fluid gender is to have Tom Hiddleston play fluid genders. So play the different genders that Loki might travel through in his/her/their journey through the series. I want to be clear here. I don't think that casting Tom Hiddleston as the variant Loki would be a particularly good idea. Purely because twofold answer actually. It would be a big ask of him to be both himself and the variant Loki, not himself, original Loki and variant Loki, and that is a big ask. And B, I think that the parameters that we have for filming are not up to the standard that would be required to have Tom Hiddleston as both original and variant Loki.
in this kind of situation. I just don't think that you can really pull that off, even in this here year of 2021. And like, I'm just gonna label a different streaming services thing now, because there's going to be a 3 by the end of this video. But in Netflix's version of Lucifer, which did start out on Amazon Prime, but in Netflix season 5 of Lucifer, when we're introduced to Michael, who is Lucifer's twin, it is Tom Ellis playing both parts. And I just don't think that it works particularly well. Like, they do a really good job with what they have, but ultimately, I just don't think it's like, they're never quite convincingly there when it's one person playing two parts. It's never convincing enough. The lighting is always slightly off, the stance is always slightly off, all of that kind of stuff. It's always just that little bit out of sync. And if you are aware of that kind of thing, it can be really off putting. So I think casting somebody else to play the variant Loki is a really good idea. And I will get into more of that further into the video. So now we can go back to video version of Will, animate Will, if you will, who is going to get into, if we're not casting Tom Hiddleston to play the variant Loki, what exactly do I mean by having Tom Hiddleston play different presentations of Loki?
What do I mean? I mean, literally, dress Tom Hiddleston in feminine clothing. Potentially lengthen the hair if you want to, or even just do something different with it, like put it in like a half ponytail or a full ponytail, and have everyone call Tom Hiddleston's Loki she, her. Have Tom Hiddleston's Loki present again in a slightly different format, pick whatever kind of conglomeration smash of gendered characteristics you like, and have everyone call Tom Hiddleston's Loki they, them, because it's obvious from this appearance that Tom Hiddleston's Loki is not in his masculine form, not in her feminine form, they're in their neutral form. That's how you do a gender fluid character. You don't cast new actors, even if they have magic, to be able to physically change their form and change like their actual base format, and like whether they've got hips, whether they've got hips, the size of their hips, whether they've got boobs, what size their hands are, what kind of jaw shape they have, the hair. Like, don't change those actual things with your actor, because your actor is the representation of that character, and ultimately real life non-binary and gender fluid people do not have the opportunity to magically change their forms whenever they want to, no matter how much they might like that. And that is the dream for oh so many of us. But basically what I'm trying to say is you need to use Tom Hiddleston to your greatest advantage. You need to put him into all of these potential Lokis, or Loki forms, and explore that in a sort of environment where he always looks like Tom Hiddleston and always looks like that base Loki that we recognise from the films, but presents in these different ways and is respected for it. That's the goal here. And you know a thing that actually did this really well? Surprisingly well, in fact. Good Omens on Amazon Prime. And again, I'm not trying to tell you to go out and get an Amazon Prime subscription just to watch Good Omens, but in Good Omens, David Tennant as Crowley, when they go through the history of the two characters together, David Tennant as Crowley presents in a feminine manner on several occasions throughout their history together. And it's just David Tennant in typically feminine garb. And the thing is because it's like historical garb, it's quite sort of hard to tell if you don't really know anything about that historical garb. Like, I only know about it because my friend who is an archaeologist, when actually that is female feminine clothing from that time period, and I went, what? That's amazing. Yeah, and the way that they've styled David Tennant's hair here also matches the feminine styles for that time period. So, and I was like, that's brilliant, because it's just such a nice way of including gender fluidity and not being attached to your own gender throughout a period of history. And like, of course David Tennant would have been up for it, like not like to put him on a pedestal or anything, but that is just quintessentially David Tennant. He is a Shakespearean actor. Most Shakespearean actors are pretty chill about presenting themselves in various ways, or at least most Shakespearean actors worth any kudos. Because ultimately that's part of Shakespeare. You just have to be able to disguise yourself as any gender at any given time. which is why they now do gender blind casting and identity blind casting at the Globe, which is pretty cool. Anyway, or at least they're trying to do it. It's a new, relatively new implementation. But anyway, yeah, so the best course of action is to do that same kind of thing, is to put Tom Hiddleston into these gendered presentations, varied gendered presentations, change the use of pronouns, change the use of like scared little boy to scared little girl, all of that kind of stuff, scared little child, all of that kind of stuff. That's the best course of action. That's the best way to do it. And I'm quite like intrigued to see what they do with this and like how they cast and characterize and like present the variant Loki in comparison to our original Loki. And spoilers for episode 2 from here on out. If you haven't seen episode 2, go and watch it now. Before you watch this part of the video, just put me on pause, watch the episode, come back and listen to further ramblings. The thing I did not like about the variant Loki was the hair. Why? Why, Will? Why was that a problem? What's wrong with the variant Loki's hair? Well, the problem with the variant Loki's hair is that it's blonde. And as far as I know, and again, I'm not an expert on the comics, but as far as I know, Loki has always been black-haired. And the pictures I've seen, the screenshots, the caps I've seen of Loki shifting through different genders is they're always a black-haired individual. Femme Loki has a really, really long black hair. Masculine Loki has anything from like the Tom Hiddleston hair, shorter, and gender fluid Loki, wow, like not gender fluid, gender neutral Loki, just wow, so many different options for presentation there. Love it. And like every time I've seen a capture, a still, a frame, that's the word, from the comic books that has Loki presenting in a new gender, as it were, they've always just come in and gone, today, this is my terminology that I'd like you to refer to me as today. And it's just that perfect, exactly how a lot of gender fluid people actually present themselves. They come into a room and they're like, this is a he, him today, this is a she, her today, this is a they, them, well, always. I am always a they, them, that's just my life. But yeah, so like, ultimately it was weird for me to see the variant Loki as blonde, and I don't really understand why they've done it. I'm hoping they'll sort of explore a little bit more why they've decided to do this in series, but I'm not particularly, confident that they will do that. I liked the style. I thought the style was perfect for matching Tom Hiddleston's Loki's hairstyle, because it's the same sort of length. It's just a little bit more feminized. It just would have been perfect if it was black hair, and then it would have been like, oh yes, Loki, rather than having to rely on the helmet, having to rely on the outfit, having to rely on the fact that you've already picked up that this must be a Loki because that's what everybody's saying. So unless they're going to explore the idea that this is actually Thor pretending to be Loki, and actually, by the way, Thor is gender fluid in one version of the universe, which would be super cool, but probably isn't going to happen. Like, yeah, I don't understand why she's blonde. And this feels like such a sort of ridiculous hiccup. But it's a thing because they've established the gender fluidity of the character. It seems weird to me that the feminine version would be, and I know this is a different version of Loki, this is from a different branch of time, but it seems weird to me that this Loki is blonde for no apparent reason. Like, I need to know why. I need to know why she's blonde. But yeah, like it's a thing. I need to know why she's blonde. I need to know what the deal is with her. I need to know if she is also gender fluid, or if this branch of Loki has gone full on, I'm a woman now and forever. Like, I need to know all of this stuff because I am... And I'm not even like a rabid fan here. Like, I know I'm coming across like a rabid fan, but like, I'm not a rabid fan. I've watched most of the Avengers movies. I think I've watched all of the actual Avengers titled movies, but not all of the MCU movies. I'm not always a huge fan. I really loved Avengers Assemble. And I really loved Thor Ragnarok because it has got some of the best humour in it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the MCU that I'm not a huge fan of, and I really didn't think I was going to watch Loki. And I really wasn't going to watch Loki until this gender fluid thing came about. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is if they don't really do anything good with it, if they don't do anything positive and active with this gender fluidity that they have chosen to include, like they could easily have chosen not to bother. They could easily have not put this one little typed bit saying sex gender fluid or sex fluid on the list. They could easily have not bothered with that. They could easily have just shrugged it off. They could have cast Femme Loki as the variant. I'm sorry, I don't know the actress's name. I haven't looked it up. Should have, didn't. But yeah, they could have cast Femme Loki as the variant and never explained it. But the fact that they have bothered to include this physical thing in the file of fluid because they have decided to cast Femme Loki as the variant, they've kind of made that promise now to non-binary and gender fluid people and people who love gender fluid and non-binary people that they will look into it, that they will put it out there a little. And if they don't, I'm going to be quite disappointed but not surprised. It's going to be another one of those moments of like, so you're willing to give us scraps enough to bring us here, but no actual food. Cool. That's fine. And if you are interested in reading about non-binary, and not so much gender fluid, but there will be gender fluid at some point, characters for free, you can check out nopoodles.wordpress.com where I post my short stories. And if you would like a book with non-binary characters in it, keep your eyes peeled for my book that comes out hopefully before the end of the year, but I will update as things happen. Hopefully, theoretically, I might make a video about the end of the Loki series when that comes out, but I'm not sure because it depends how pissed off I am about what they've done or how happy I am about what they've done. It really depends on a lot of factors. So I guess we will see. We will see whether I make a video. If you would like to see that video, please leave a comment and let me know, because if you want to see it, I will endeavour even harder to make it happen. I am not making one of these every week because I do not have that much brain power. I can't do 2 videos a week. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram. I am at nopoodles. What else do I have to say at the end of these videos? I don't even remember. This has been very unhinged. If you'd like to support me so that I can afford my Disney Plus subscription service and make more of these unhinged videos about gender fluid characters, please consider clicking the link to my Ko-fi account in the description below. And yes, that is all my unhinged rambling for today. I really thought this was going to take longer, but actually filming it, it's only taken about 22 minutes, which is impressive. Let me know what you think about gender fluid Loki in the comments. Let me know if there is a specific Marvel comic that I should actually pick up and read about gender fluid Loki. Let me know if there are other places I can go for gender fluid characters, because we do love a non-binary character in this house. Me and my wife both.